What's up, everybody? Jake and JT back with you once again inside the three. And today is a special day here on Inside the Three because not only is it our second interview, but we also are joined and we're honored to have former Pro Bowl quarterback Gus Frerotte. He's played for plethora of teams in the NFL. He's got great experience. He's local toward us. And we're just so excited to invite him onto our show today to discuss the NFL, his journey from small town PA to the rise in the ranks in the NFL. Gus, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for going inside the three with us.
Yeah, thanks, Jake and JT. Thanks for having me on your show today.
No problem at all. So for those of you who don't know who Gus is, he's played in the NFL from 1994 to 2008, played with a few teams under Washington, Detroit, had a few stints in Minnesota, and so on and so forth. He went to Tulsa for college, did exceptionally well there. Grew up in a town close to me. He's just a few accolades of his, as I mentioned before. He was a Pro Bowl honor in 1996, 114 career passing touchdowns. And if you're just, if you know how I operate on this show, I love fantasy talk. 1,129 fantasy points according to Pro Football Reference. So definitely a historic career for Gus. And without further ado, let's dive deep down into it. And Gus, the first thing I want to ask you about, you start off from small town PA, you go to Tulsa, a notable D1 school, to the NFL. Take us through the journey of how you go from small town PA to the grandest stage in the NFL. How did you end up there?
Well, growing up in Fort City, which you guys, you may know of since you're out in Evansburg, which isn't that far. I mean, I've got a few speeding tickets in Evansburg before going the back way to DC. But, just growing up in Fort City, small town, 5,000 people, playing football, loved baseball, played all the sports. I got invited to a camp in Pittsburgh called the Joe Butler Metro Index Football Camp. And back then, college rules were different, where every college coach could go sit in the stands and watch all these guys. We basically practiced, right? We went through this camp and got noticed that way. There's no social media back in the day. There was no huddle. There's no way to get kind of noticed. But I always tell people, if you're good enough, people will find you. So it doesn't matter where you go to school. The word will get out. And so they just saw a big kid who could throw the football, didn't know where it was going, but he could throw it. And so got recruited by Tulsa, Louisville, Kansas State, Temple, Michigan, some other schools. And, just kind of really enjoyed my time with Coach David Rader, who was the head coach at Tulsa at the time. We had another coach, Mark Thomas, who went to Penn State, played at Penn State, who recruited our area. He was the offensive line coach. And so he recruited me. Then the head coach, David Rader, came to my house twice to visit me all the way from Oklahoma. And that, for me, just sold it. That's why I wanted to go to Tulsa. And then just ended up going to Tulsa and didn't realize that I was going to graduate and be with a bunch of other guys from Western Pennsylvania as well. So I actually graduated with 12 other guys from Western Pennsylvania. So we had our own little Pennsylvania crew down at Tulsa when I went there, and it made it feel like home.
Now, the one thing you brought up of Gus that I kind of want to ask you on, it's something that I can appreciate as a former college athlete myself, track and field, football, obviously. The recruitment process, probably one of the most, in my opinion, one of the most nerve-wracking and one of the most exciting portions of everything. Really just, you'll get those big-name schools, as you mentioned, Louisville, Michigan, etc., and you'll get the smaller schools, in a sense, not necessarily known for a lot, such as Tulsa and, some others. What is the process like, and how was it being able to be, recruited by a team such as Michigan, Louisville, and how was the process on your end?
You kind of communicated. They would call your house. There was no cell phone. Sometimes they called the school. They would call the football coach, and then you could talk to a school that way. They had their certain rules they had to follow. But if they wanted to watch film on you, you tried to put your films together on VHS tape. And I remember sending out a kind of highlight VHS tape that took us forever to make. of my high school playing career, which wasn't very long. But it just was, you send it out on VHS to the schools, and hopefully they like you. And really the way they communicate with you is you used to send snail mail all the time, right? So there was no text, or there was nothing like that. So you would get all these letters in a binder, and crazy enough, my mom saved all that stuff. She was one of those people that anything I got, she saved. And I have bins and bins of newspaper clippings and letters from colleges, you name it, she saved it. And I don't know what the heck I'm going to do with it. My kids will probably just use it as start a fire someday. But other than that, that's kind of how it went. And it was just it was a crazy process, because it is nerve wracking. But the great thing is, being in high school, you tend to forget that stuff really fast. Your parents, I think, get way more nervous than you do. And you kind of just roll with the punches.
It's always a heartwarming story whenever you hear how, you could put aside how you rose through, school, college to get to the NFL, but it always starts with, obviously your mom saving everything that you've done. I mean, that just shows that she knew that her son would one day end up as a pro football player, or just, she's just proud that her son was able to use his skills in order to use them to his advantage. And then the other thing you mentioned was compiling that VHS tape. That's I feel like something that nobody really thinks about these days, because we have all access to Adobe Premiere. We have, we're able to burn DVDs at the speed of, pretty much, it doesn't take as long, and it's not as arduous of a task as it is, compiling the VHS tape. So I mean, back then, as you mentioned, recruiting was way different. And I think that's one thing that so many people overlook nowadays, is how the recruiting process was, and especially getting your tape out there. Cause you mentioned it, there was no social media. There wasn't any quick ways to do it. It took a while. So to get to go to the NFL, to get recruited by, a good, not just a good college, but a great college in Tulsa back then, that says something about how you rose and how you overcame all these things. But always, you mentioned the difficulties in getting your tape out there and getting the word around, but what were some of the other obstacles that you faced along the way in your journey to the NFL?
Well, when you get to college, you're this kid from a small town outside of Pittsburgh, and you get there, and there's kids from all over, the whole United States, and they're all competing for spots. They're all, you're all trying to make it. Some kids had different dreams. One of the biggest things is that when you go to college football, it's a job. You learn how to work every day, and you can't take it lightly. I took it lightly my first year. And it was difficult, instead of buckling down studying, I was just having a good time. It's like I was out of the small town. I'm in Oklahoma. It's someplace I have never been. And, I think just looking back on it, probably didn't take that year serious enough, because I got redshirted, just kind of had some fun with all my buddies who were there from PA as well. And then just probably going after that first year saying, okay, I got to buckle down, or I'm not going to make it. And so started buckling down a little more, starting to concentrate on lifting and running and doing all those things you have to do to be, to get better. And then some of the adversity, I had a kid that was in front of me, TJ Rubley. He got hurt. I played. He came back after a medical red shirt. I sat the bench again, and I became the punter. And then I was able to play my last 2 years. But in reality, I really never had any thoughts of making the playoff or making the NFL. I just thought, hey, I was a good quarterback in college. It was a lot of fun. I'm going to go hunt and fish like I love to do, and be out in the woods. And then, you start getting recruited. I had an internship with the Pittsburgh Pirates my last semester of college. And so I moved back. I moved in with my wife and her apartment. She went to Pitt. And so then from that point on, I was working with the Pirates, and I was super excited. I was always a Pirate fan, and just being in Three Rivers Stadium at the time, and working in their weight room, and being down there every day, walking over to the Steelers facility, meeting their strength coach, and all the people around Three Rivers, which both the Pirates and the Steelers were in the same building at that time, was amazing to me. As my dad listened to them on the radio all the time, so that's what we did. So that was just a dream in itself come true. And then all of a sudden I get invited to the combine, and you go to the combine and you're there all of a sudden with all the other top quarterbacks of that year. And, I didn't really care who they were. I didn't even know half of them. I just knew I wanted to play football. So went out every day, got to throw the football every day, try to impress the coaches with your arm strength. You're just throwing every route, every combination, working with everybody. And, after that, that's when I started getting the calls from quarterback coaches, coordinators about, hey, can we come work you out? And they're going to find you. Like I said, I wasn't at Tulsa. I was in Pittsburgh. So there I was, played my career at Tulsa, but I'm back in Pittsburgh, interning with the Pittsburgh Pirates. And the coaches would come to me, and I would work out at Three River Stadium. I would work out at facilities at the University of Pittsburgh. And everybody was gracious enough to give me that opportunity. And I worked out with several coaches. And then, you get an agent, and then, the agent is like, okay, I think there's a real possibility you could get drafted. And, the agent's job is to go around. I had a local agent, Ralph Sindrich. And, we just kind of waited for the call. I had a party at my house on draft day. Didn't happen the first day, but the second day in the 7th round, the Redskins call, and the Washington football team calls and says, congratulations, you're going to be, our next pick. And you're just like, wow, I can't believe this is happening. And so you're excited, you're ready for the next opportunity. And it was just kind of great to be able to celebrate that with my girlfriend, who is now my wife of 26 years, and my whole family.
That's definitely one touching story. And it shows the success that you can find out of college, whether, right out of college or, like you said, you were out of college and you were interning at the Pirates by the time. By the way, love the favorite team. I'm a huge Pirates fan too, sadly, but it shows the success that you can find no matter where you may be. But we may have touched on this a little bit, and I think you may have teased this in the last answer you gave. You talked about interning with the Pirates and at Three River Stadium, where both the Pirates and Steelers played. You're obviously from close to Pittsburgh, so I feel like this is sort of a dead giveaway, but it may not be. What were some of your, favorite team when you were young? Was there anyone that maybe you looked at and said, man, I really want to play for them. I think I can, that would just be a dream to play for this team. And did it change at all through the years? Once you got drafted and you played for a few teams, like, did your favorite team ever change, or how'd that work out for you? Your favorite teams, did they evolve at all, or did they stay the same?
Well, I've always been a Pittsburgh Pirate and a Penguin fan. I've always been that, and that's never really changed, no matter how good or how bad they have been. And sometimes it's harder to watch than other times. But as far as football goes, why I had the number 12 was because of Terry Bradshaw. Watching the Steelers, I grew up in the 70s, early 80s, watching them, and just the remarkable years they had. And it was just so much fun. We'd go out and play in the snow. We'd play football in the fall. On Sundays, so many people would come and play before Steeler games. We all 12:30, we were done, we were going home, so we could all watch the games. And that was kind of how I grew up. As I got older, and when the Steelers didn't draft me, I really wanted to go to the Steelers because that was like my hometown. That's where I wanted to be. That didn't happen. And then throughout my career, I tried to come back to the Steelers 2 more times, and they didn't take me in free agency. So I kind of grew a love-hate relationship with the Steelers. Always was a vintage Steelers fan, not so much a Steelers fan anymore. But I do know people there. Kevin Colbert, who's their GM, was the GM when I was at in Detroit. He was assistant GM, so I've known him for a long time. And you just know some of the coaches that have come and gone through there. So I appreciate what the Steelers are and how great the Rooneys are and what incredible owners they are and how they keep the team solid year after year after year. I think that's something that, Steeler fans should be very joyous and feel very lucky about, because not every organization gets that. But throughout that, as I was playing, it didn't really matter to me who I played for. I just wanted to play, and was lucky enough to end up to do it for 15 years.
Now, you've played against some very notable names during your time because obviously you grew up in the modern era, which a lot of names people would recognize more than, say, obviously if they were, early 90s or something like that. But you've played up until 2008. So you've played a lot of against some pretty notable names in the NFL. Unless I'm mistaken, but from the talent that's here, you should have played, or you've played some very notable people.
Yeah, I was lucky. I played with and against some incredible people, and had some good competitions against teams. One of my things was always I love to be tough. I love to take the hit, be able to come back, make the throw. And I think that is very difficult on defenses. I think when they see the fear in your eye and they know they got you, then it's going to be a long game for yourself. But I didn't have the greatest foot talent, as I say. I wasn't a scrambler in any regard, but I love to stand in the pocket, make the throws, and you can definitely make a game for yourself and play a long time doing that, as we see with the guy who's going to the Super Bowl and Tom Brady, who I would guess to say that he doesn't have very many rushing yards in his career.
Yeah, I wouldn't say Tom Brady is fleet on foot. He's
Right.
no Michael Vick. Let's say that.
Yeah, he's no Lamar Jackson, but the guy, I'm sure Lamar Jackson said, I'm no Tom Brady either, so the guy, there's something to be said. I think that you prepare for how your quarterback is. Obviously when we see a scrambler, guys know how to get open. If you're moving around in the pocket, if you got a guy like Tom, you better get your head around because the ball's coming out quick. And he does an amazing job of that, knowing where everybody is, takes, makes choices that are tough sometimes. And he relies on his players to come down with the win. So, the game is great. I've played against a lot of good players, defensively, the teams from the Cowboys of the 90s were their defenses were incredible. They had some incredible players. The Niners, I remember getting hit by, what was their middle linebacker's name? Oh, it's sticking. I should remember that forever because he ran a middle blitz through the ball. He hit me right in the sternum, lost all the wind. That was the only time I've ever been not knocked out, but where you kind of lose all your breath. And I remember standing in the huddle and asking, I couldn't say it, but Brian Mitchell was standing beside me and he called the play in the huddle. And I just got out. I couldn't breathe, but we ran the next play. So, that's just part of the game. You got to be tough, and you're going to play some amazing opponents and some amazing athletes, and you got to stand in there and be able to do it, because if you can't, they'll find out real quick.
Yeah. It's that physical toughness you need, as you mentioned, and who needs to breathe anyway? Just rub some dirt in it and get going. But
it's overrated.
Breathing is for the weak. It's like sleep. You don't need it. JT's rejoining us. His internet connection accidentally went out. He's at college, so we all know how that college Wi-Fi is. So while he rejoins us, you mentioned a lot of the favorite memories that you had being on the field, but who were some of probably some of your favorite coaches that you've enjoyed playing for the most? I mean, you've played for Mike Shanahan, Dick LeBeau, which is a big Pittsburgh name. Who are some of your favorite coaches that maybe tugged a few heartstrings or just stuck with you throughout the years, as you went on throughout your career?
Well, most teams I loved all the coaches. Some of them I didn't get along with, but you respected them. When I played in Washington, Cam Cameron, who was my quarterback coach, just respected him, loved him for all the hard work he put into making me the quarterback that I was. And, he was just an amazing coach. It was really a sad time for me when he left to go be a head coach in college. It was great for him. And I was really excited for him, but I knew that my kind of trajectory was going to change because he and I had such a great friendship, and I trusted him. And then it's hard when you're young and you lose somebody like that. That always makes it difficult. But I've had other great coaches. Bobby Ross, when I was in Detroit, was there's this guy who has this great coaching background, and he and I every morning I loved. They had this great steam room, and every morning that was my thing. I'd get up early and go to the steam room and kind of wake me up, get me ready for my day. And Coach Ross was always in there. And I can't tell you how many times I woke him up as he was sleeping in the steam room. And I'm like, Coach, you're way too old to be sleeping in the steam room. So, Bobby Ross, as you said, Mike Shanahan, Mike Tice, Scott Linehan, Jason Garrett was a QB coach of mine for a while. You name it, and I've kind of been with those guys. Gary Kubiak, I've been around him. He's an amazing coach. So a lot of these guys, Jim Zorn was my coach one year, Norv Turner. Just a lot of these guys that you've seen and heard their names come through the league. I've been lucky enough to play for them and sometimes with them, but it was just an amazing experience. And probably sometimes my arrogance got the best of me and I thought I knew more than they did. But, you really have to humble yourself every time you meet somebody new and listen to them, because you're always going to learn something. And it could be the smallest thing, but if you listen close enough and you pay attention, you're going to learn something that can hopefully improve what you're doing day to day.
Gus, one question I got to ask you is some of the guys that obviously we see around the league and some names that we've heard, Jerry Rice, you said, or what's called Jerry Rice, you had Barry Sanders, a lot of household names that you actually had the pleasure to go up against, a lot of names that people wind up seeing nowadays and, are starting to learn about. What was it like going up against those guys? And I guess you could say sometimes after or games, possibly getting that pre or post-game talk with them and everything like that. What was it like going up against those guys and also just getting some knowledge from those guys as well? Just some of the co-players as well. I know we talked about coaches.
Yeah, I just think that, I can think back to a few examples. Deion Sanders always was great when you play against him. He would come up to you and say, hey, he'd call you youngster or whatever he called you. He wasn't that much older than me, but, he was just an incredible, great player. And he'd say, hey, keep slinging, you got me today, or something like that. And he always gave you confidence, and he was incredible to be around. He just instilled confidence in everybody. He was always around, and then you meet guys like Warren Sapp. I was with the Bengals one year, and Warren's, no, it wasn't the Bengals. I think it was with the Redskins. And Warren Sapp came up to me after the game and he said, hey, Gus, you're moving your foot. And I watched it on film that every time you do this little thing, I knew it was a run. So don't give it away. Make sure you keep even or whatever. And I'm like, oh, hey, thanks, Warren. I appreciate that. So guys would do that even though you're playing against them and you're working hard to beat them. But they knew that you were in the same kind of you were all trying to get to the same goal. And so you were playing football, they were playing football. They wanted you to be the best you could because they knew that that's who they wanted to play against, always the best. So guys would always talk. Obviously, with as many people as played football over the years, not everyone got along, but for most part, people are respectable, and you can sit down and chat with them about, hey, what do you think? Can I do better? And all of that. And sometimes you just, like I said, you have to humble yourself and take notes.
Absolutely. And the other question I want to ask, I'm not sure if Jake asked this or not, because again, my college internet, everybody loves it. It's the best, right? But the one question I definitely do want to ask you, you brought up, visiting Heinz Field, interning over at Heinz Field and or Three River, wherever, you know what I'm saying? And
Yep.
But pretty much, what was it like once you made it to the NFL, being able to finally playing at the now Heinz Field and everything like that, and just being able to go home, quote unquote, if you will, and play an away game, but at the same time, a road game?
It is kind of surreal when you get to come home to where you grew up and playing a game like that. There's a lot of expectations on you from your family and people, and friends. My wife always took the brunt of a lot of that stuff. And I said, hey, if you want tickets or if anything happens, you got to call her. And she was great at saying no. But we tried to accommodate as many people as you can, because, it's something that's pretty cool. There's somebody that's from a small town. Everybody wants to go to the game. Tickets aren't the cheapest thing around, but, you try to help as many people out as possible. So it was always neat to be able to come home and play against your hometown team. It's just an amazing experience. But for me also, it was an amazing experience playing in all the stadiums that I got to play in. You'd watch them on TV, and I got to play in old ones and new ones. My favorite ever was RFK in DC, and I got to close it out and open the new one, Jack Kent Cooke Stadium, against the Arizona Cardinals. And it was just an amazing experience when you get to go these places that have so much history to them, and you hear these stories, and then you go there and you get to experience. It's an incredible experience, like playing the Raiders in Oakland, playing the Chiefs in Kansas City, and you go to Mile High and you get to play there and be the home guy there. So all those experiences are incredible, and when you play in front of 70, 80,000 people, it's kind of hard to describe what that feeling is like.
Yeah, and the one question I gotta ask on that experience, and I feel like this is a question that is probably the most commonly asked. Out of all the teams that you're an away team for, or which stadium would you have to say was the hardest? Because the one thing that I've learned over the past couple of years of studying football is that home crowds can get an away team so out of sync sometimes that we've seen it multiple times. People call timeout. I mean, look at the Penn State-Michigan game, I believe it was. As Penn State was so loud, they had to call a timeout on the very first play of the drive because they didn't know what they were calling and they couldn't get out their audibles. So for you, whether it's football or whether it's NCAA or NFL, which stadium was always the loudest and always, like, in a way, the hardest to kind of like communicate with your teammates to get that play out there, or to adjust a play or call an audible, if you will?
Well, I think any dome that you play in and they have good fans, it's going to be loud. Even in Detroit, when we had good games and it got loud, it was hard to hear. But, anytime you go to a dome, when you're playing in Minnesota, when you're playing in Houston, when you're playing in New Orleans, it's always crazy loud. It's a hard place to go in and win because you're not going to be able to hear. So you have to prepare for that. So all week in practice, it's just like it's an overload of noise because the coaches have speakers blaring and it's going to be loud, and communication is done by signals, and there's not a lot of check with me's and things like that going on. So you just kind of have to play your game, and sometimes it makes it better. I think when I see these quarterbacks always doing a check at the line of scrimmage, sometimes I think it takes away from the momentum of the game. But other times, I think when it's good, you can really take advantage of situations that the defense has given you. But for me, the craziest moment I ever had in a stadium was when I was with the Washington Redskins, and we were playing in Kansas City. We had some starters out. I was playing with backup receivers, backup tight end, backup running backs, and we go there, and we're all on the sideline. And so they have a really good team at that, really great defense, at that point. And so we're already kind of worried, like, how are we going to do this? And let's just go out and play. And so the national anthem plays there. And I don't know if you know this, but when at the end, everybody in the whole stadium yells Chiefs, right? And I never experienced that before. And it's so loud, and it just sends us thunder through you. And then when we were there, they do that, and then overhead flies the stealth bomber, and it's just like everybody on our sideline is staring up in the air with their mouth open, looking at this stealth bomber, and the whole stadium yelling Chiefs. And you're like, all right, this is gonna be a long day, let's get this going. And it was a long day.
Wow, that I didn't expect to go through that whole I don't want to say culture shock, 'cause that sounds like a negative thing, but I never thought I'd be taken through the whole feeling, the whole electricity down on the field. Like, that's something you don't see every day. And Gus, thank you so much for sharing that. But I'm sorry, I'm just stunned after that.
Yeah, when I watch, I never was privileged enough to play in a Super Bowl, but when you watch a Super Bowl, watch those guys on the sideline. Like, you're not going to see it from Tom Brady because he's just been there so much, or maybe the Chiefs that were there last year. But guys that have never been there before, you're going to see a look on their face like you can either take it in and enjoy it, and really, like, you definitely can't be overwhelmed by the situation, but you definitely have to take it in, because the opportunities that you get to go to the Super Bowl and all that fanfare and everything that happens before the game, it doesn't come around. I mean, what Tom has done is incredible. The Chiefs going back there again, but you see some of the greatest quarterbacks that, rarely have ever gotten there. And it's just an amazing experience. So when you guys watch the game, watch those guys on the sideline, and you'll kind of see a couple of them and you'll see what I mean.
It's that final breath before the first snap of the game. And pretty much trust me, I got nothing will compare to the Super Bowl, but I get the feeling. Championships over here for like track and field and everything like that. It's that final breath you take, in a sense, not the final breath or anything, but just you breathe in the atmosphere, because it's sort of like you said, it's a surreal moment, correct?
Yeah, it's the first pass, it's the first run, and everybody gets to take a deep breath after that first play happens, and whatever you're doing, right? It's the if you're in track and field and you're waiting for the gun to go off and nobody's run a race yet, everybody has that nervous tension going on, and so when the ice is broken, it really breaks for everyone.
I couldn't agree more, honestly. But fast forward to today. From what I've read, you're involved in coaching high school sports, but was there ever, are there ever times where you think to yourself, man, I miss being on the professional gridiron or collegiate gridiron, that you might want to go back as maybe a coach or an NFL or NCAA executive or something, something related to that? Or are you just looking to stay more small town and focus on your family now that your time in professional football is over with?
Well, I did try when we moved back to Pittsburgh after living in St. Louis for all those years. I did try to go on and go back to the NFL and coach. But when you're 45 and you're trying to get back into the NFL, and you have to start, like, they're not just letting you come back as a coordinator. Like, if I would have started in 2008, and I probably could have gotten on a team pretty easy. But after you're out of the game for so long, it's really difficult to go back. I tried and went to the combine, and went to the Senior Bowl. I did all those things to meet all those coaches, and for the jobs that I was going to be able to start with, a lot of people really wanted to get younger guys in there. And plus, I think a lot of guys knew that when you know a lot, sometimes you want to say a lot, and some coaches just don't want that, right? They don't want somebody coming in who's going to be somebody who's going to tell them, like, no, you should do this and not this. Like, it's their team, you got to run it. So, that's kind of how it went for me. I did coach some high school. I don't coach anymore. I was coaching at Central Catholic for a little while my sons were there. Now I do my podcast. I'm creating my own studio here in Pittsburgh at the Energy and Innovation Center, and I'm creating some certified coaching clinics and camps for former players, so that I always figured that, hey, what are we good at? We watched, we learned, we studied football our whole lives. Let's figure out another way to really make some money at it. There are camps everywhere, and you see kids going to them, but we're the only country in the world where you don't have to be certified to work with kids. And we want to create a certification program so that our former players can go out, create a business around camps and clinics starting at the young age of 5 years old. And the goal of it is to really take our players and then create an opportunity for them to not only make money, but thrive in something they love, but then really help the kids stay in the game. I think we have so many kids that are not playing football, that are leaving football. Their parents are scared, they're scared, or they have a terrible experience in youth football or something like that, and they leave the game. So we really want them to stay in the game, because they can enjoy and learn and love it, and they can be a part of the game in all kinds of ways. They may not be the athlete on the field, but they can still be an announcer, they can be a referee, they can be a marketing guy, they can be a GM, a coach, all types of things. But if they learn to not love the game, then they're probably not going to do those things.
Right.
And I guess the one thing, I guess this will kind of relay into a question somehow. I guess the one thing you could say about most sports is that once you get into a sport, like for example, football, you'll never lose the passion for it. You'll never lose the drive for it. It'll be with you in a sense for the rest of your life, whether you go pro, whether you go college, whether you just go to high school and everything like that and just do high school. Somehow, some way, it'll find a way to pretty much like, be with you for the rest of your life in a sense, correct?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you play it long enough and you play it at a high level, it's always going to be in your DNA. But I think a lot of people, what the problem is that they go through that period of youth, kind of middle school. They've had a bad experience. They don't want to play anymore, or they got cut or something happened. And, that's shouldn't be what it's about. We want as many people to enjoy and stay in the game as long as possible. That not only helps our sport, but it helps, find those next incredible athletes that are out there that can, that we love to watch on Sundays or Saturdays.
Definitely. And the one thing I gotta ask you on being a coach and everything like that, it's kind of a two-part question. What is it like, when you see one of your kids succeeding and everything like that, and he's gonna go college and everything? Is it kind of like one of those, how can I put it? Like self-motivating things, like you succeed as a coach, you see he's succeeding and everything like that. He's going to do big things and it's happening for him. And he, it's a good kid type of moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've been lucky enough to coach some kids in St. Louis that are playing in the NFL right now. I coached Ezekiel Elliott and I coached Foye Luakan. Foye is a linebacker with the Falcons and Ezekiel is a running back with the Cowboys. And I've known them since they've been in 7th grade. They graduated with my daughter. And so when you coach the high school team, we went to 3 state championships. And when you coach those guys, they're just kids, right? And you're trying to teach them things on and off the field. And we had 28 players and I loved them all equally. My sons were there. And you just enjoy it. I probably was a little crazier than most coaches, learned to calm down a little bit, but you just enjoy their path. And, all the kids that I coach, it's great that I coached a sport that I love and I had 2 kids playing at the highest level, but also other kids that I coached that I enjoyed, they're doing things at the highest level as well. So you're just happy to see their success, whether it's in the same sport or doing something different, but hopefully you gave them enough keys to be successful in life.
Gus, one thing that JT and I always focus on when we talk about, the sport of football together, whether it's youth, collegiate, professional, is the safety around the game. And I know JT had a question regarding player safety that sort of ties into your camps and how you want to show parents that, the game is safe. The game is fun to play. The kids should get more into it. So JT, why don't you, since this was your question, I don't want to steal it from you, but I feel like this needs to be asked, especially by someone who has been there in the position that gets hit the hardest, in my opinion, and that he's focusing on making the game safe for the younger generations.
Yeah, definitely. And it I feel like, again, this is another basic question that I feel like is asked a lot and is also like not really touched on as much as well. And kind of like, you hear the generations that you've gone from. You've gone from playing in the 90s to coaching nowadays. And we've seen how much the game has evolved and everything like that in terms of, in a sense, QB protection and also player protection. How much has the game changed in your mind? And like also just like not even just quarterback protection in general, just how much has the game changed from what you were learning back in the day where it was pretty much you have X amount of time to get rid of the ball. And then nowadays, and then it's like you get hit 3 seconds after you throw the ball and it's like no flag. But nowadays it's like, even if you just touch the guy with a feather, or it's like, it's immediately 15 yards for roughing the passer. So how different has the game changed in your mind? And how is that also, in a sense, affected any coaching strategies, if anything, for you?
Well, I don't think it's changed too much. I mean, it's still a physical game. You talk about it's like getting touched by a feather, but that feather weighs 350 pounds. So, I think when you look at it, yeah, the rules have changed a lot just because they're trying to keep players healthy. And we still see players getting hurt all the time. It's just a physical game. It's the nature of the game. And to really understand it, you just got to experience it. And I think when you see those penalties called on roughing the passer and things like that, when I watch the game, it depends on who the quarterback is a lot of times. And I'm like, okay, if that was Tom Brady, that definitely would have been called. But if it's, Gardner Minshew with the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're going to let him get his tail whooped. So, and then I don't think you can really, change the game. I think when you talk about changing your coaching style, it comes to tackling, right? And using your head. And obviously when they make a new rule, like when you weren't allowed to cut the lineman from behind anymore, you taught one way, they changed the rules. You have to, adjust. And so I think it's just adjustments you make, just like in-game adjustments. You have to make in season, every year new adjustments depending on the rules they make. Just like in high school football, when you can't leap over people, right? And they changed that rule. And I remember we had kids that would leap and they'd call 15-yard penalty, and it's just something that you have to learn not to do. And so they've really tried to make the game safer by taking some of the craziness out of it. But it's still a very physical game. People still love playing it. People still love watching it. And, I don't think it'll ever be to where it's never going to be flag football, right? These guys, the defensive players always say, well, all these quarterbacks are wimps. And, well, yeah, you're hitting us. We don't get to hit you. Like, switch places with us and see what you think one time. And, it's still a physical game, and you still see guys taking a beating out there.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, because, it's easier for us as fans to sit back and say, oh, well, have our own opinions about, the hits, but you're actually experiencing it. So obviously your view is a little bit more definitive than us, the fans who, we're pretty much couch coaches, essentially, where we can watch every Sunday, be fantasy managers, and, get angered by the smallest things. But I mean, you have that firsthand knowledge of, like you said, the feather being 300 pounds. I mean, you've played in the air with Ted Washington. Ted Washington is one big feather. If you understand.
Well, yeah, And there's a new technology out there called haptics, right? So that you can put this vest on, and somebody, across the country can touch the vest with the sensors on and things, and then you'll feel it, right? So now just imagine the future of, like, in fans, like, you want to be, all right, that quarterback out there, you put on his gear, and when he gets hit, you're actually going to feel it. Like, you're going to feel how, not obviously it's not going to be the same, but you're going to feel all those things. And it is like being in a small car wreck. Like, every time that some guy comes through and knocks you on your can. But it's a different game, when you're out there and you're running full speed, they're running full speed, and you see guys get hit all the time. And like I said at the beginning, you got to be tough. You cannot be soft and play this game. You're just never going to make it.
Yeah, I agree. And, it's no surprise physical being a physically demanding game, but I feel like if that technology were made more available to the general public, and, there were, everybody was able to experience it, I feel like our viewpoints on the physicality and toughness that it takes to be a football player would be changed for the better, because now we'd understand what you feel, obviously, when you were in there. And because, we only know so much. So I seriously think if that technology was made more available to us, I think we'd have a better understanding. But until that day comes, unfortunately,
yeah, right.
We'll just
exactly.
Yeah, we gotta clean up the world a little bit first before that stuff happens. But let's talk a little bit let's finish off the show with a little bit of predictions. Now, we had a guy from Cleveland Sports Talk on last time, and we got his thoughts on the playoff picture. And, obviously, unfortunately, we couldn't get you on before the NFC and AFC championships, but we got something better. We got a former quarterback, and we got a Super Bowl coming up here in a few weeks. And we also got some end of the year awards. So, Gus, being the former quarterback, you obviously know, you can analyze true talent and how physical a game is going to be. And this year should be, is going to be no different than any other. You mentioned it, I don't know how many times in this episode, that Tom Brady's going once again to the Super Bowl. It's almost like a yearly vacation for him going to the Super Bowl. And it's going to be he's going to be facing up Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and the defending champions. Like, this is going to be a matchup for a lifetime. So give us your take on this year's Super Bowl. What should we expect, and who do you think is going to walk away the champion?
It's crazy because I really thought the Packers were going to be there, but they did not play their best game last week. And if I would have been on before, I would have picked the Packers and the Chiefs going to the Super Bowl. But it's going to be the Packers and the Buccaneers. I think we have two incredible quarterbacks, one who will be the greatest of all time, and the other one who's trying to catch him and is pretty darn good, right? In Patrick Mahomes. And I, when I look at it from their standpoint, who are they going up against? Tom Brady's going up against the Chiefs defense that plays pretty well. They rely on kind of bend, don't break, but they're going to put pressure on you. They're going to try and look for your weakness. Coach, the other defensive coordinator, is going to, give you 5-man pressures, trying to find out what you're bad at, and then they're going to pressure you there. But, when you look at Brady against them, they have some incredible receivers on that side. And some good running backs. So they have a lot of weapons for Tampa Bay. And so you can never count Tom out in a Super Bowl. There's no doubt about that. He's going to make the throws that are going to give them an opportunity to win. And then when you look at the other side, Tampa Bay has the best run defense in the league right now. And so it's going to be very difficult for the Chiefs to run the ball. But we saw last game that didn't matter, right? Patrick Mahomes made some incredible plays. He made some plays in the first half that put points on the board for them, and did some scrambling with a bad toe. And he just is incredible. He trusts his guys. He knows the offense so well. And the coordinators there know him really well, that they're going to give him opportunities to make plays. And so I think it's going to, at the beginning of the game, it's kind of going to be close. It's going to be tight. I don't think you're going to see an imbalance at all. And then the second half, we're going to figure out which team is going to kind of overcome. But I just think the way the Chiefs are playing, it's going to be a close game. But I like Patrick Mahomes winning this one. But I think it's going to be close. I think the spread is 3 or 3.5. And it's probably going to be something like that. It'll probably be a big turnover that makes the difference in this game.
Now, the one thing I want to ask you on the Super Bowl, and this is something that actually a lot of people don't realize in a way, but for the first time ever, you have a team actually playing at home for the Super Bowl. It's going to be in Raymond James Stadium. And the Bucs are the first team, like I said, in NFL history to be playing at home in the Super Bowl. How much of a difference do you think, and how much of an impact do you think that's going to make on the game for not only the Bucs but also the Chiefs in a way?
Well, it's crazy because when you think about going to a Super Bowl, who gets the home locker room, right? That's the team that has the best record. That would be the Chiefs. So do they switch that up? I don't know. Or do just Tampa Bay keep their own locker room? So it's crazy to think about how that's going to happen, because nobody's ever been through that before. And so Tampa Bay playing at home is incredible. I'm sure their fans, that's what fans are always have wanted, and who knows what those tickets are going to, because Florida is not like that locked down like any other state. And so I don't know how many fans are going to let into the Super Bowl, but I'm sure they're going to do all they can to let as many in as possible. And there'll probably be a lot of Tampa Bay fans spending a lot of money on Super Bowl tickets in the next 2 weeks. But, I look at that. That's an incredible experience. And there's no one better that probably should have happened to than Tom Brady. I mean, he's broken every record. Nobody's going to catch what he's done ever in the NFL. If they do, it's going to be a long, long time. So you think about what Tom Brady's done, and I don't know if he's done yet, but to play at home for his home team in not the AFC, but the NFC he's playing for now. I mean, he's just done so many things, and to be able to play at home in front of those fans, Tampa Bay will be crazy for the next few weeks.
Now, real quick, I don't mean to be shutting Jake out or anything, but the one question I do want to ask, and I don't think we brought it up up. And I guess since we're talking about Tom a lot real quick, it might as well just ask. Obviously, you did have the privilege to play against Tom Brady in his early years and everything like that. And this is a guy who was drafted, seventh round, I believe, even out of Michigan and everything like that. Everybody's thinking he's not going to be able to, do so much. But we brought it up. This is his 10th Super Bowl, record-setting 10th Super Bowl for the man. Has played unbelievable. People will absolutely hate Brady. There are three things in football people will hate. In a way, the Cowboys. That's 90% of fans. A successful story such as Brady's. And then, God, I'm trying to think what the third thing could be. Just rival teams, I guess you could say.
Roger Goodell.
Yeah, pretty much. Goodell. That's a good one.
Maybe officiating.
Yeah, that's all right. So 4 things. But the one thing I definitely got to ask you, what was it like going up against what arguably nowadays is probably the best coaching quarterback combination in Belichick and Brady? And what's it like seeing him nowadays, just the way he's thrived over the years and just seeing the success that Tom has gotten over the past couple of years?
Well, I mean, it's been over a decade, so or longer, 2 decades, and his success is driven by his will to win, his demeanor, his attitude. He's been through a lot, and I think that the greatest thing Coach Belichick ever did was, I don't think Coach Belichick ever let him get too big. I think that what happened was, if Tom screwed up in a game or in practice or whatever, Coach treated him just like he treated everybody else. Deep down, I think we all knew that nothing would ever happen, but in front of everyone else, Tom was treated the same. And so I think that puts a precedent on everybody. Now, after you win your, 4th, 5th Super Bowl, then it's like, okay, Tom can do what he wants. But even then, I think from everything I've heard is Coach Belichick would kind of treat him the same, and you'd rip on him, you'd be hard on him when he made mistakes. And I think that's what was great about Coach Belichick and why he had so many Super Bowl teams. Tom was great. He's extremely good under pressure, moves in the pocket, knows the game. There's nothing that he's going to see out there that he hasn't seen before. And so he just does things with his mind extraordinarily well. And I think that over those years when you would go play in New England, after so many years of them having success, I mean, just the thought of going to New England and playing, you already felt like you were 7 points behind, right, when you went in there. And playing in that division with the Dolphins going up there, it's not easy. And they always had good teams. They always had great game plans. Their coaches were, coached. I don't know. I don't think they ever left the building. They game plan like none other. And so all those things put together with an incredible quarterback out of the 7th round who probably ran a 4.9 40 or something, just nobody ever thought that would happen. And he got a shot because Drew Bledsoe took a shot to the ribs, and he never gave it back, which is incredible. And so that's what you got to do. You get your opportunity and you have to make the most of it. And that's exactly what Tom Brady did.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people may not like Brady, but I mean, you put it in a whole new perspective. Like, you got to at least give the man the respect that's due, and especially for all he's overcome, and being a 7th round pick, bringing that 4.94 as you mentioned, and being essentially a fill-in, like being the Chad Henne for Drew Bledsoe, essentially. Like, that takes a lot, and especially to come through where he's been today. Like, I think there's a lot of respect that should be thrown toward Tom Brady's way, no matter what fan base you belong to. But,
well, you guys could see it like this, right? So think about it as the Steelers, right? Big Ben gets hurts his elbow. A young quarterback comes in, has an opportunity to make a name for himself, has the same players as Big Ben had, but just can't do it, right? And so you see Tom coming in as the same players that Drew Brees or Drew Bledsoe had, and can do it, right? And makes a name for himself and stays there for a long time. So the opportunities, when they come, you have to take advantage of them, because the NFL will find your weakness and kick you out real fast.
I get that. Yeah. And that's actually, I'm really glad you put that into perspective of Steeler fans, because I feel like it's a different connection for that. But at the same time, like you find parallels to that, like you did, and that definitely puts it in a brand new perspective. And like now I'm gonna not reconsider, but obviously keep that in mind whenever I watch the Steelers, especially with their quarterback debacle today. I mean, it's all over the news, especially with Dwayne Haskins being signed. Like now you got that next man up that's coming in, so that's actually a perfect parallel to what's going on right now. So yeah, that thank you for including that, and I'm really glad that we can now see it through that way, especially comparing to Tom Brady and his story. But you talk about Tom Brady, talk about his performance, and going into the Super Bowl, but overall in the season, do you think Tom Brady deserves that MVP nod, or do you think there's maybe a more likely candidate that is going to, there's been a few names tossed around, but do you think that Brady should be right there getting the MVP nod, or do you think there's someone else that is going to walk away with it?
The MVP goes for the season only. It doesn't include playoffs. I think Tom has been extraordinary in the playoffs. But if I look at the season and the guys that have been right up there. I mean, Derrick Henry ran for over 2,000 yards. Aaron Rodgers had an incredible season that he put up some incredible numbers. Patrick Mahomes has led his team to obviously back to the Super Bowl. As far as Tom goes, if you looked at everything going the whole way through playoffs and everything, yeah, he probably would be up there. But just in a regular season, how they had the slow start and everything, I don't think that you look at him as now we can after the playoffs, but after that last game of the regular season, I don't think he will win the MVP. Right? He may win it for the Super Bowl, but I don't think he'll win the regular season MVP.
Okay. I like that. And I think it's, that's fair. There's a lot of good talent out there that's, worthy of that nod, even just a nomination for it. So, it's going to be a tough competition to decipher once the end of the year awards come. But with that being said, I mean, this has been a tremendous honor. It's been a fantastic episode. Gus, thank you so much for going inside the three with us. And thank you for really unraveling new perspectives about the game, going in depth about your playing career and how you rose to the NFL. And just overall, just a fantastic bit of our afternoons today. Like, thank you so much for joining us and really giving us a whole new perspective on the game, on the gridiron, the game that we all love so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. And, anybody wants to hear more, they can check me out on my podcast, Huddle Up with Gus, or they can go to my website, huddleupwithgus.com, and check us out. And, I've done over 100 shows, so there's lots to listen to. I've had some of my idols on, like, his son, Roberto Clemente Jr., to Rocky Blyer, to some people that I've always admired in the sports world. So, I admire what you guys are doing. Keep it up. Keep up the good work, and just keep the challenge of podcasting alive. I think it's a great thing, and you get to tell your stories and hear other people's. So thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem at all. And thank you so much for the kind words and the encouraging words. We plan on going forward with it, and it's all about stepping stones and who and who you connect with. And we're glad to have you as our first real professional athlete on. And we encourage everybody to go check out Gus's website and Gus's podcast. I mean, if it's anything like this episode today, you guys are in for a treat. And this is just one bit with him. Like that's a whole realm of Gus Frerotte over on that end. So I strongly encourage our viewers, our social media followers, and those who visit our website to go follow, go subscribe, and just stay in the know with Gus and what he's doing. I mean, he's making great strides in football today, and we hope to talk to you here soon and catch up. Maybe have you back on in a little bit, in a little while, to discuss maybe your efforts with the the football camps that you talked about and where those are going, and maybe pretty much just like a revisiting episode just to see how everything's doing. But that's all. We can work that out later. But this has been a fantastic episode. We thank you for having us, or we thank you for coming on, and we thank you, the viewer, for listening. Go check out Gus's stuff if you haven't already. Go subscribe to us as well on Anchor, Spotify, and everywhere you can find your podcast. That's IT3 Show, or Inside the Three. Check out our website, it3show.com. I do plan on writing a bit of a brief overview on this episode with some with some audio clips to encourage those to come listen to this, because this has just been a treat. I can't get that on my mouth. Like, this has made my day, and it's only 1:50. But from all of us here at IT3, we want to thank Gus for coming on. We want to thank Terry, his media director. She's been fantastic in setting this up with us. So thank you, Terry, so much for making this opportunity possible. Thank you, Gus, for making this opportunity possible. Thank you, JT, for joining us. And thank you for joining us as well, as we've just been Inside the Three.